This guy needs an introduction. His name is Marcel. He's a Brit living in Värnamo, precis. And he's a good friend, and he has been to Skog several years. And he is somebody that we thought would be just a great, that stupid hat. He would be a great conversationalist in the company of our main guest and our guest of honor this year, the legend from Britain, Elsbeth Beard. I figured that more than Elspeth coming here to Sweden and holding a speech, just the conversation between two great people, one great buddy and one great legend, would be such a nice way to use this opportunity. So, ladies and gentlemen, give them a hand. That's your seat, sir. Here's your mic.
Thank you.
Here.
Perfect.
This is as hot as it gets in Sweden.
Oh, I know.
I have some notes because I've got a lot of questions I want to ask you. And I think first, for those of you who don't know Elspeth, as an introduction, I generally say you're a trailblazer, and I think that word is used and abused too much. But if you're into what we all do, Elspeth should be somebody you know. And she was riding bikes when it wasn't normal for women to travel alone, let alone on a motorbike. And this was before GPS, before mobile phones, before proper panniers even.
Indeed.
Yeah, before research. So I think we should start at the beginning. So how did you get into biking in the late 70s, I believe it was?
Oh my goodness. Well, the first bike I rode, I was 16. It was actually a Husqvarna. And I'd been expelled from school, which is always a good thing to do. And I'd been expelled from school, and I'd been sent to a college in London to finish off my A-levels. And it was at this college that I met and made friends with this group of people who rode motorbikes. So that was my introduction to motorbikes. And one of them had a Husqvarna that he was taking down to the Salisbury Plain, and asked whether I wanted to come along one weekend. So that was my first time I rode a motorbike, which is actually 50 years ago. Can you believe it?
Congratulations.
I know, I can't believe it. 50 years ago. And then about a year later, I bought a little Yamaha YB100. And it was simply to easy transport to get around London. That was it. It was cheap, it was efficient. And at that time, I didn't really imagine that motorbikes were going to become such an important part of my life. It was just, as I say, easy, cheap transport. But after about a year of that, I was a bit bored and wanted to go a little bit faster. So I bought myself a Honda 250. And then after a year of that, I got a little bit bored again, and I wanted to go a bit faster. So I bought myself my BMW 600. Which was a 1974 BMW. I bought it in 1979, so it was 7 or 8 years old when I bought it. And I think it was that bike, I suddenly realised, you could go places on this. You could travel on this. And so the first trip I did on my own was up to Scotland, and then I went around Ireland. And then in 1980, I went around Europe with a friend. And then in the summer of 1981, I flew out to Los Angeles, and I bought a a really old BMW 75/5, and I rode it from the west coast to the east coast of America. And it was kind of somewhere on that trip, I don't know, probably in Arizona or something, riding through the deserts. I thought, wouldn't it be amazing? It was just this little thought just popped into my head. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could ride a motorbike around the world?
You getting to all my questions.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
great.
Okay,
No,
all
this is
right,
amazing.
okay, all right. Carry on.
This is amazing.
And so, but it literally was. It was just a kind of fleeting thought that went in and went out, and in those days, because people didn't really do long trips on motorbikes. I mean, a few people. I mean, I think then I'd probably heard of Ted Simon, who had ridden around the world, but I didn't know anybody else who had done it, and so I didn't really know how easy or how possible it was going to be. I mean, the world seemed a much larger place. You couldn't find out about countries, as you said. There was no internet. But anyway, this thought was in and out of my mind, and it was only the following year, when a series of events happened to me, that I decided to go off and try
to do it. And how did your friends and family think of you in your early 20s riding these big bikes? Because it wasn't the norm back then.
Well, most of my friends, fortunately, were motorcyclists, so that was fine. I mean, my mum despaired. She hated motorbikes, absolutely hated them. She was a doctor, and
that's normal. My mum hates bikes, so I think that's for most of us.
She hated them even more. So she had worked in A&E when she was training to be a doctor. So she saw all these injured motorcyclists coming in. She had to treat them. So she absolutely hated motorbikes. And I think she always thought it was just a sort of phase I was going through, and soon I'd grow out of it.
Are you near the end?
And I'd become sensible. No. So, yeah, and my dad was a strange character, so he never really said anything. But secretly, I think he thought I think he was quite proud, actually, of me riding bikes. But
and neither of your mum obviously didn't ride, but your dad didn't ride either.
No, nobody in my family rode bikes.
So it was a bad influence at school, basically.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know, Salisbury Plain, where you first started to ride, that's off-road. It's a military area in the UK, thousands of square kilometres.
Yeah.
So your first experience on a bike was off-road.
Yeah.
And what inspired you, or who or what inspired you to want to ride around the world? It just came into your head, or
yes. I mean, this thought. So the seed had sort of been sown when I was riding across America. But I never thought it was something I would do. It was just, like now I think, wouldn't it be great to go to the moon or go up in space? But you don't ever think you're going to do it. But it was so by this stage I'd been studying architecture for 3 years. And when I was studying architecture, I met this guy called Alex that I fell in love with, and he ended our relationship about 3 months before my finals. So I was I was unhappy, I was brokenhearted, I couldn't really work, so as a result I did very badly in my degree, so I got a very bad degree. So I was at this sort of the summer of '82. I just had to get away, really. I just didn't want to stay at home. I just had to escape and do something completely. So I thought, I know, I'll go and try and ride my bike around the world. So.
And what was your planning? Like, you started in America, but what was the thinking behind that? What was the logic behind doing it?
The logic. Well, yeah. So I was 23 years old when I left. So I was fairly young. I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest. And I thought, if I start off in America, it was somewhere where I'd been to the year before. It was English speaking. The roads were reasonably good, and I just thought it was a sort of safe place to start. I mean, I was very apprehensive. And I think for me at that age, with my experience, venturing off to Turkey and Iran and Pakistan and India, it was just too much for me to kind of. So I thought, I'll do America. get to New Zealand or Australia, because I only left with £2,500, so I didn't have that much money, and I knew it wouldn't get me all the way around.
What's that in today's money? I think you mentioned it.
$2,500. It was about $5,000 probably. Then I think it was US dollars. I think it was $2 to the pound then, so 5,000 US dollars.
And you knew then,
I don't know, yeah, but I knew it wasn't enough.
Yeah, you knew from the beginning you had to solve it somehow.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think if you always wait until everything's perfect, you've got the right money, the right gear, the right bike, the right, then you just never go. So I thought, I'll go with what I've got. I'll make it as far as I make it. I'll then worry about it when I get there. But I hoped I'd get to New Zealand or Australia where I could work.
And that was always your plan, to stop over in the other side of the world and save up some money.
Yeah.
And where did you go after Australia?
So Australia, I then travelled up through Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, went right up to the north of Thailand. And then I tried to get through Burma to India, but I couldn't because all the borders were closed. So then I rode all the way back down to Malaysia, to Penang, and shipped my bike across to Madras. And then around India, up to Kathmandu, and then up through Kashmir, Leh and Ladakh, and then through Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Greece, Yugoslavia, and back home.
Just a few places. And which, maybe an awkward question to ask, which country was against your expectations? Like, we've all got stereotypes of countries. Like, where did you go that really changed your expectation or how you perceived a country? What was really different to how you imagined it?
I don't think I didn't really go with expectations about. Australia was a lot more harsh than I imagined. I found travelling through the outback in Australia sort of mentally and physically exhausting. It was a very challenging country for me. The roads were terrible, it was really hot, and you had kangaroos and cows and flies and dust and floods, and it was just this onslaught of, and I was riding 500 miles every day of just kind of nothing, boring nothing, and it just starts to play with your mind a bit. And so Australia was a lot harder than I thought. It was a lot tougher than I thought. India was hard work for different reasons. It was more the constant attention that I got because people in India 40 years ago had never seen a BMW motorbike.
Double engine.
And so it was just all this constant attention. I mean, I would stop and I'd have sort of 50, 60 people around me within like 3 minutes. And it just drove me crazy. So that was so they'd never seen a BMW motorbike. Then I sort of built these huge aluminium top box and panniers for it when I was in Australia. So they'd never seen anything like that before. Mind you, I don't think anybody had. But anyway, and then when I took my helmet off and it was a woman, it was all just kind of just too much for them. They were just kind of, they just couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was almost as if I dropped from outer space, I mean, it really was. And so I was just, whenever I was just constantly followed everywhere. And so it was exhausting.
You spent quite a long time there, right, in India?
Unfortunately, yes, because
I
couldn't get out.
I got that impression from your book that you weren't maybe that fond of India as a tourist destination. Have you been back since?
Actually, I have been back. I was back end of last year. I was invited to India Bike Week, which was a real turnaround. And I was quite apprehensive about going back. But I had a great time. I didn't get ill, which was, because I was so ill. The first time I was in India, I was ill for like 9 months. I lost 2.5 stone in weight. I was... Ugh. But this time...
Maybe I need to go, actually, in that case.
So so India was certainly a challenge. I love northern Thailand, but I kind of expected to like Thailand. I don't know why, and I did. Um, Kathmandu and Nepal. I loved Kathmandu and Nepal, and all the Himalayas. Kashmir was just stunningly beautiful.
And which of the countries from your original tour have you been back to most, and which would you recommend? Because I think I speak for most people here. I would love to do what you do, or you did, but
Yeah.
I have commitments, and like all of us do. If you could spare 2 weeks a month, where would you recommend going?
I would definitely go to Leh and Ladakh. I would go Kashmir at the moment is a bit dodgy, but Leh and Ladakh I think is still okay. Northern Thailand is pretty good. But you see, all these places now are so changed. I mean, there's so many more tourists there now. It's because when I was there, there just weren't any. It was just brilliant.
You mentioned in your book, like in Thailand, there was no English road signs, for example. So you learnt the city names in Thai basically as you were travelling around. Yeah.
I had to. It took me 3 days to find a vague map of Thailand that had all the places written in Roman script and in Thai script, so I could sort of try and work out where the hell I was. I got so lost in Thailand. I was constantly lost.
But that's part of the fun, right?
That's all the fun.
Yeah.
It's when you get lost is when the adventure starts. Definitely.
You made some amazing roadside repairs to your bike. You got very lucky and you MacGyvered quite a lot of stuff. What was the most audacious thing you pulled off? What was the miracle repair you pulled off at the side of the road?
Well, probably the first thing that happened, well, kind of major happened with my bike was in Australia when I was riding along and all this smoke started to come up from under my tank, and so I jumped off the bike and anyway. So finally, it turned out that my wiring loom was completely burnt out. So it was just a kind of mangled, melted thing of plastic, and I literally I'd been riding in the outback for like half the day, hundreds of miles of absolutely nothing, not even seeing a house or a roadhouse or anything. And literally, so I stopped and all this, let's say, the smoke came up and I was on the side. I thought, oh, what am I going to do now? And I just looked down the road and I saw this little sign that said auto electrician in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you couldn't make it up. And so I wheeled my bike down to this auto electrician, and the guy was from Wales. The
best people are, by the way.
Absolutely. He was from Wales. His name was John, and he'd never touched a bike before. He'd only ever done cars. So we got my Haynes manual out, which had this wiring diagram at the back, and we spent 3 days making a wiring loom from scratch. And unfortunately, he only had brown and black wires. But it's still on my bike today, and it still works. So that was pretty good. It just shows you never can tell. And then another time when I was in northern Thailand, and my generator light was stayed on, which meant that my battery wasn't charging. So I thought, oh, now what? And I always used to, whenever I had a problem with my bike, I'd always sort of get out my Haynes manual and sit on the side of the road and flick through the pages, hoping I'd get some bit of inspiration as to what was wrong with it. And this old Thai guy came along and saw me, and he didn't speak any English, and obviously I didn't speak any Thai, and he was trying to ask me what was the matter, and so I switched on the engine and I showed him the light and I revved it up and the light was still on, and I was kind of going like that as if it was supposed to, it wasn't supposed to be on. And then he said, come, like this, come with me. So I followed him. He was walking. I just followed him really slowly behind him. And we went round the corner and round that corner, and it was this big factory, and it was this alternator factory which he owned. Anyway, so he called all his guys over, and they were all standing around my bike, and they got all these probes and were kind of trying to work out what was wrong with it, and then they started to take it apart. And then they found out it was a diode on the diode board had gone, and which of course I couldn't get a new one. So they went to some back room and they rummaged through a whole kind of drawer of single diodes, and they unsoldered the diode, the faulty one, and they put this new diode in, put it all back together. Worked perfectly. They wouldn't take any money at all. They wouldn't let me pay them, and that's still on my bike today as well, and still working. So,
where is your bike today? I guess it's your pride and joy. Do you have it in your house or something?
It's in a garage down the end of the garden. I still ride it. I still use it. I was out on it last week.
How many miles is it up to now?
Oh, I've no idea. The speedo broke so many times. I have no idea at all. I have no idea. It's got nearly 100,000 on the odometer thing, but it's done. I don't know. I've no idea.
As I mentioned earlier, you didn't really have the best plans when you started out, and you talk in your book how you basically gave up on planning and just went with the flow. What would you say about that? Is that the best way to travel? Do you think that approach to travel is possible today still, where you can wing it a bit?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I think I think now the problem with technology is that it actually allows people to plan too much, and it almost becomes boring. And I think so much of the most amazing things happened to me were the unplanned things, and actually often when things went wrong. Like my bike broke down, or I was somewhere and I'd end up staying with this Thai family who felt sorry for me, and it was all those. But those are the things that are the adventure. That's the journey. It's not actually riding your bike. You're riding your bike is simply the tool to enable you to have these amazing adventures and amazing experiences and meet amazing people. It's not, so, and I think if you plan too much and everything is booked up and where you're staying, and it takes away the adventure. It takes away the possibility of these things and these interactions with local people. And
do you think it would still be possible to do it the same way today, though? Do you think that's...
I'm not sure it would. And actually, interestingly, about 3 years ago, I went to Mexico, and somebody lent me a bike in Mexico and said, there you go, off you go. So I spent 6 weeks riding around Mexico. And I said, I'm going to do this old school. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. And it was almost impossible to do it, because if you turned up in a town, there were every single, hotel room was booked up because people had booked them up weeks ago. And so you couldn't just do it on the hoof like that, like I did, because, I'm sure you can to an extent, but I still think it's probably not possible to do it the way that I did.
It's a bit sterile now, isn't it? It's not as fun, I would say. Those interactions, especially your interactions with strangers, like the amount of kindness strangers showed you is something that really stands out from the book.
Yeah.
And for those of you who haven't read Elspeth's book, it's a motorcycle book, partly. For me, it's more of a travel book, and it's a book about you discovering yourself and how tough you are. Because by the end of that book, you're very tough. By the end of that book,
you learn a lot about yourself. You get pushed to your absolute limits of everything, endurance, everything, and you really learn what you're capable of doing, which is a lot more than most people realise they are.
by putting yourself in difficult situations,
Yeah.
accidentally, quite a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And you were showed a lot of acts of kindness by complete strangers. What was the one that stood out the most? And there's some amazing stories in your book.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other in Thailand when I hit a dog, and it happened right outside this Thai farm, and I mean, it was a big dog, and I just literally it came from behind a truck that was coming the other way, so I didn't even see it, and I just hit the dog off the bike, slid up the road in the ditch. And so this Thai family came out and helped me get my bike out the ditch, and I ended up staying with them for a week. And they were so kind to me. They had very little, but they fed me.
What did they feed you?
Well, on the very last day, when I went to say goodbye to the mother of the house, I went into the kitchen and I saw the half-eaten remains of the dog that I'd run over.
Waste not, want not.
Waste not, want not. So I realised what I'd been eating for 4 days.
Was it good?
It was
good?
very tasty, actually. So, but yeah, no, people are. I mean, people are kinder, and I still think that that's true now. I think, you'll meet far more nice, kind, helpful people than you will not. So,
I think so too. Yeah.
Definitely.
If you were to do it again, would you do it the same route? Would you travel the same countries? Would it be of interest to you to see how things have changed in the 40 years since you travelled?
I wouldn't actually. I wouldn't want to do it. I've been back to Kathmandu. I've been back to Australia. I've been back to various other places, and I kind of wish I hadn't. They're so changed in the last 40 years. I mean, they're unrecognisable.
Just too many tourists.
Just too many tourists. It's so commercial. The locals are a bit, I don't know, I wouldn't say, it's just different. I mean, it just changes. And I think if you have a fond memory of a place that you went to a long time ago, it's probably best just leave it
alone. Yeah. Leave it as a memory.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember riding up to Everest Base Camp up through a river and boulders and God knows what, and now there's a bloody motorway going on there virtually. You know what I mean? And you think,
and a McDonald's probably.
And probably a McDonald's, and I don't know. It's not quite the same. I think I'd rather remember it as it was.
One thing you kind of touch on in your book, and I've heard in interviews, is you talk about when you got home, how you'd become a completely different person and nobody else had moved on. And I feel like that. I will feel like that after this weekend. I think that's because you've experienced so much and you've grown and nobody else has grown with you. How would you recommend dealing with that? Because I feel like after 2 days, let alone a couple of years.
Yeah, I think for me, it was something I didn't expect. It wasn't, so I wasn't prepared for it. I rather stupidly expected people to be interested in what I'd done, but actually people weren't. They didn't, I wouldn't say they didn't care, they didn't understand. It was so far away from anything they could comprehend. Now it's easier because a lot more people travel, and so it's easier to find like-minded people. But then people didn't do kind of trips like that, and to have kind of lived the life that I had, done on the road was just completely changed me. And I think the other thing, traveling like that is very intense when you're trying to, every day was, you had to survive, you had to keep yourself together, your bike together, and you've always got something to deal with and always a challenge, and then suddenly when you get home it's this kind of nothing, everything's so easy, and so there was that as well, but also the fact that I didn't really have anybody to talk to who could relate to what I'd been through. So I felt very isolated, very alone, and it took me years to to slowly get back to sort of accepting, normality.
The people hadn't grown the same way you had, basically.
I mean, literally, they were all just doing exactly the same thing as when I'd left.
And what was the reaction like when you were talking about planning your trip? You spoke to some people in the industry. What was their reaction like to it as well? They were quite dismissive, right?
They were very dismissive. Yes. I was just So I tried before I left on my trip. Again, I stupidly assumed that people would want to help me, so I wrote to bike magazines and tried to get interest and a bit of sponsorship, and basically they just laughed at me and wrote me very rude letters.
Can you tell us the content of one of those letters and how you responded to it as well? It's quite funny.
I can't. I don't know the letter word by word, but so I wrote to sort of bike magazines, and I wrote to BMW actually, who did reply. Most of them didn't actually even bother to reply, but I got 2 letters back. I got one from BMW that was very nice and polite, but basically said, we already know our bikes are the best, so we don't need to sponsor anybody, but best of luck, have a good trip. So, but it was nice, it was polite. And then I got this incredibly rude letter from Bike Magazine. And when I sent my letter, I sent a picture of me on my bike. And their kind of response was, Brecken said he'd write this letter, but he can't because his tongue's jammed his typewriter. So-and-so, Mike Clements, has formed the Elsbeth Beard Appreciation Society and wants to know where you're going to be so he can get there first. I'd like to offer you sponsorship, but I think it would be a waste and a shame for London. I mean, it was all just,
just the 80s.
Spare me, please. It was all 80s, male.
Chauvinism,
exactly.
But you gave them what for back, right? You sent your own reply.
I did, which I started off saying, "Dear boys," and then I just picked each of their comments off with a fairly sarcastic reply, I think. So.
And what advice would you give to women looking to ride bikes? Because I look around the crowd, and no offence, guys, mostly guys, but we are a stereotype. We're all a certain age and a certain colour hair. There are a few women here, but it would be nice if there was a lot more. So what advice would you give to women looking to get into biking?
I think I would say start off small with a small bike. Don't be too, just to build up your confidence, really. I think some women, I see some women riding bikes, and I just think it's just way too big for them. And the problem is if you're riding a bike that you haven't quite acquired certain skills, and it's too big and it's too heavy, you're just making it so much more difficult for yourself. So I always say, start off with something small. Don't care what anybody says or what you look like. Just it's for you. You feel comfortable. Get your confidence, and then slowly work up and get a bigger and bigger and bigger bike. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's good to hear, because there was a lady in our group today. Is Julia still here? Henrik, do you know if she's still here? But generally the best person I followed today. I was trying to keep up with her, and she was ridiculous. She's probably like 1.50 m on a T7, and she's gone. She was so good.
Yeah.
I don't know how long we've been, or how many of my questions I haven't asked. I did have a long list that I've completely forgotten. But this is the best way to do it, just to talk, I think. So I think we should take some questions, because I'm sure people will have some. And no tyre or oil questions.
Please.
But generally, what were the tyres like back?
Well, they were difficult to find, but I did only have one puncture throughout the entire trip.
I've had one today.
Yeah, well, there you go. I had one puncture throughout the entire trip. But I did service my bike. I was very good at servicing my bike. I did the oil change every 3,000 miles religiously. I was very good at looking after my bike.
Yeah.
That's it. Oil, tyres done.
And German engineering.
And German engineering, yeah.
So has anybody got any questions? I'll bring the mic over to you as far as I can stretch. No pressure. You can whisper it into my ear and I'll ask the question if you prefer.
Have you ever worked as an architect?
I have worked as an architect, yes. So when I got back from my trip, and that was another good thing that the trip did, I sort of got my love back for architecture. I saw these incredible buildings all over the world. I worked as an architect assistant when I was in Sydney, which was great. And so I kind of, so then when I got back from my trip, and it was one of the things that helped me kind of get back into not the real world, but so I went back and I finished off my architecture training. And then before I finished, I ended up buying an old Victorian water tower, which I spent 7 years converting into my home, which is where I still live. And then I won a whole load of architectural awards for the tower, and I started up my own practice in 1998. So I've been running my own practice now for 25 years. That's how I make my money, so I can travel. Yes.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Did you contact the motorcycle newspaper after you succeeded?
I did actually. Well, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. A friend of mine. Well, interestingly enough, because the letter that they wrote me, I kept, and I've got it framed in my toilet at home. So I've got the letter, and I was interviewed by some guy in America shortly after my book came out, and I sent him the letter, and he put it on the internet. And so this letter went all around the internet. And of course, the guy who wrote it, the editor of Bike magazine, called Dave Calderwood, he heard about this, that his letter was circulating on the internet. And so interestingly, he is more famous for that letter than any articles he ever wrote, which I think was brilliant. It serves him right. And he did actually send me a message on Facebook, and he said, apparently, dear Elspeth, apparently I wrote a letter to you in the 1980s. I don't remember it, but if I did, then I'm sorry. So it was a kind of pretty weak apology. But I've never met him, but he is still around, and we are sort of friends on Facebook, but we don't.
He doesn't get a Christmas card.
He does not get a Christmas card. But
Anybody else for questions? Yes.
How do you look at YouTubers like Itchy Boots and younger women coming sort of going in the same direction? Do you watch those things?
I don't really, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's just different, and I don't think you can kind of compare. I mean, I think it's great that it enables them to travel and to, but I recently, when I did this India trip, because they flew us into Mumbai, gave us some bikes, and then we rode them down the coast, and as a celebrity group, and as part of this celebrity group there was these influencers, I won't say who, and and these influencers, and and every time we stopped, and we were in this beautiful place, they didn't actually stop to look at it. They were saying, where's the content? Where's the content? Where's the content? Where can I do a video? Where can I do my blog? And I'm just thinking, look at where you are. And it's almost as if they were kind of obsessed with this, keep feeding this monster that they'd made, that they almost had lost the point of why they were travelling. But maybe that's just because I'm old school and that's just not the way that I did it. So maybe I shouldn't say anymore.
I think most people here would probably agree with you.
Oh, okay. But you know, it's horses for courses, and I think it's good in a way because it does allow people to, you know, they get out there, they travel, and it's better to do that than a lot of other things. So, you know.
Anybody else?
What was the most challenging part of the journey?
I think India was the most challenging part of the journey for me. India was, because I was very ill. I mean, I did meet up with a Dutch guy halfway through, and we started to travel together, and that was, I mean, just so much. It's so much easier traveling with, you know, with two people. I mean, as the guy who was on earlier saying, if you're on your own, you know, it's you've always got to be ahead of yourself. You've always got to think and forward, and every decision you have to make yourself, and it just becomes exhausting. Whereas if you're traveling with somebody, especially as a woman on your own traveling, it was really hard work, and suddenly traveling with somebody it did make it much easier. But I think India, and I think by the time I got to India, I'd been on the road for a year and a half. I was tired. My bike was starting to, you know, have problems all the time. I was very ill in India, which doesn't help. It was really hot. It was the hot season. Then it was the monsoon. So there's all these things that didn't make it, and plus all these people around me constantly. So India was the challenge for me.
Following on from that, was there any point where you thought you might quit and give up and just leave your bike and fly home?
Well, that wasn't an option in my day. No, you see, you couldn't. You see, because what they used to do then, they used to write your motorbike into your passport, so you weren't actually allowed to exit any country unless you had your bike with you, and you couldn't really fly bikes then. So actually, the only way I was going to get home was to sit on it and ride it home, which in some ways is a good thing. So I never had this, you know, that sort of get out of jail free card.
So it was never an option.
In my back pocket, thinking, oh, I'm a bit ill now, I think I might go home. It was never an option.
Never. I almost quit with a puncture this morning. Any more questions? Yes.
On the heels of that question, you wrote about this in your book, and I thought it was really a really nice point about the humanity that you find when you travel.
Yeah.
So the question to you is, did you have in your carnet for your motorcycle, did you have the country Iran written
Yeah, so as well as writing your bike in your passport, I had this carnet de passage, which is this passport, I'm sure you all know about it, for your bike. And when I was in Australia, I had to organise my carnet. And in order to include Iran, I was going to have to put a deposit of £4,500 down, and if it didn't include Iran, it was only going to cost me £1,500. And when I was in Sydney, I thought, Iran, I might never get there. I don't know. So I decided not to include Iran as the country, as one of the countries that I was allowed to go to, and then finally, after I got out of India, travelled through Pakistan, I found myself at the border with Iran, and suddenly it was a problem. So I had a visa, so my passport, I was stamped out of or into Iran. And then when I went to the customs to sort out my bike, because the list of countries was written on the front of the document, and every other country was there, but apart from Iran. And I kind of flipped over because I thought maybe he won't notice that Iran isn't there. And I kind of handed it to him with great confidence. And but of course he flipped it back and he tapped this list of countries and he was shaking his head, Iran isn't here, and I was going, oh God. And then he looked at me very, very strangely, and he kept tapping this list of countries and looking at me, and then he suddenly he sort of handed the carnet back to me, and then he got this pen and he slid this pen across the table. And as he slid this pen across the table, he looked out of the window for about 30 seconds. I picked up the pen, I neatly added Iran onto the list of countries at the bottom. He then turned back, I handed him the carnet again, he flipped it over and went, stamp, there you go. It just shows you never can tell, and this whole problem of not being able to get my bike into Iran had been playing on my mind for like a year. Every time I got that little bit closer, I thought, oh my God, I am going to have to go through Iran, and it was this kind of real, well, how am I going to get through? And there it was, all sorted.
You got lucky.
I got lucky.
When you speak about Indian officials, they wouldn't have done that, right? There would have been 5 buildings and 10 stamps.
Yes.
Has anybody else got any other questions?
How many bikes do you own today besides the BMW?
I've got 4 bikes. So I've got my old trusty R60. I've got an R75/5. I've got a Paris Dakar R80 GS Basic, and then I've got a little Beta Alp 350, which is my green laning thing. So 4 bikes. But I'm thinking of buying another one. Somebody said you can never have enough bikes.
Well, there's 2 numbers. It's either N+1, which is the number you have, +1,
yeah.
or D, where D means divorce, -1. And I'm personally always in between those 2 numbers. What's your daily rider? What's the bike you ride most nowadays?
My GS Basic. My
Nice.
80 GS Basic. Yeah. That's my everyday bike.
So you're still a big BMW fan?
Well, the thing is, I kind of know BMWs. I can service them, I can fix them, I can take them apart. I just understand them. That's
And what tyres has it got?
it's Metzler, actually, Metzler.
I ask
I
because
think
it's
about that.
it's like the topic of every forum post is what tyres and what oil should I use.
Is it?
Yeah, honestly.
I don't read forums.
Yeah, I would advise against it. People fall out in a big way about this. Right. Any more questions before we finish for the music? I believe is coming up next.
Music.
Yeah. Not from me. Although I can
Not from
sing.
me,
I can sing. I can do a bit of Sinatra if anybody's got the backing music. Yeah.
Well, I tried to when I was trying to get out of India. That was a big hoo-ha trying to get out of India because it was all the storming of the Golden Temple in Amritsar, and so it was a nightmare. And so I was sent back to Delhi to get a permit which didn't exist, and sent to 10 different buildings that didn't exist to see people who didn't exist, and all that. So I spent about 2 months doing that, and then when I went, but the first time we got to the border, they wanted, actually they didn't want money, they wanted a Penthouse magazine. They didn't ask me, obviously. They asked Robert for they said penthouse, and we didn't have a penthouse, but they weren't interested in money. That's the only thing that we then when somebody wanted a bribe. So
Was that the only bribe you got asked for that wasn't money then?
that was the only bribe. Yes.
Any more questions? Otherwise, I think we'll wrap this up, if that's all right.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This has been very enjoyable. We could talk all evening, but thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.